Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning or good evening, wherever you are. My name's Kevin May. I'm the editor and co-founder of Tnooz.com. Welcome to this Tnooz and Amadeus webinar. We are looking at the... Sorry, a terrible moment there. I need to have a drink of water. Apologies. We are looking at the future of airports here with direct relation to the always connected traveller, how technology is enhancing the overall airport experience. Now, we all love airports because they get us from A to B. But, I mean, when you think about how much time you spend in an airport and what do you do there, but then really try and imagine how technology could actually make the airport experience so much better. So we're going to be looking at the future role of airports. You know, these are essentially meeting grounds for airlines and travellers. But this whole concept of the airport is being driven by social and technological change. So, as I said, Tnooz and Amadeus, we're delighted to collaborate once again with Amadeus for one of our Tnooz webinars. We're going to be looking at how technology is, shaping the needs and the expectations of airport visitors and those that use airports as customers, i.e. airlines, travel agents and tour operators and things like that. So what we're going to look at, how airline and airport operators can engage better with customers, what strategies and business models will enable airlines and airports to seize these new opportunities for managing, the total trip experience, for want of a better phrase. And most importantly, also how other industries or other parts of the travel, tourism and hospitality industry can learn from what airports are doing. So I'll be joined later on by Gene Quinn. He's my co-founder and the CEO of Tnooz. He will join us from the Q&A at the end. I'm also very pleased to introduce our panel. We have, from your left to right, if you can see the screen there, is Glenn Gruber. He's an AVP at Ness Technologies. He's in Massachusetts this morning. We also have Patricia Simillon. She's from Amadeus. She's on the airlines operations strategy. She's in Nice in the south of France. And we have her colleague, Brian Beard, also for Amadeus. He's an executive consultant in travel technology for Amadeus. He's in sunny Miami this morning as well. So, as always with these Tnooz webinars, we are recording the entire thing. So if you have to dip out at any point, go to a meeting, go to the bathroom or anything, don't panic. We will have a full recording and all the slides on Tnooz.com, usually within 24 hours. That's our target that we set ourselves. So please don't worry about that. We also have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, which will be about 10-15 minutes. You can send in your questions to us via a little module on the right-hand side that says, very simply, questions. So all you need to do is just send a question into there. Gene and I will look through those, and then you can challenge our panelists, or challenge us indeed, about some of the things you've heard. Try and get a little bit more detail on some of the other elements that you've been hearing about through the webinar. We'll be going up for about 60 minutes, so we may go over by a few minutes. We often do simply because we have so many questions come in, and we like to get as many of those posed to the panel as possible. As always, we intersperse the webinar with a series of polls, just to kind of gauge the audience, what they're thinking, what their strategy is, or setting the scene for the subject matter. What we want to do is just, for those of you that haven't been on a Tnooz webinar before, is just let you familiarise yourself with the polls. So please, can you vote now? Simple question, where are you located? You've got 4 options there now, so if you could just cast your votes. We'll just let those come in now. Brilliant. If you could just throw those results up now, Gene, that'd be great. Okay, as you can see there, 62% of you from North America, 31% from Europe, Middle East and East Africa, and the others make up Central, South America and Asia Pacific. So thank you very much. That's the first poll. That's the little tester. That's the one so you can familiarise yourself with the system. So a poll now directly related to the webinar. So commenting on your current experience with airports as a traveller, are they? You've got 3 options there: enjoyable, satisfactory, or poor. And already I'm starting to see lots of those votes come in. I don't think this result will surprise many of you. If you'd like to throw up those results there, Gene, that'd be great. So 3/4 of you think the airport experience is currently satisfactory given the existing procedures. 1 in 5 say poor. Not many of you think it's enjoyable. So let's hope that those of you that are listening that do have some way of changing that airport experience can learn a little bit this afternoon. So without any further ado, I'm now going to introduce our first speaker. So Glenn Gruber is from Ness Technologies. As I said, he's in Massachusetts this morning, or this afternoon for those of us that are in Europe. And Glenn, good day to you, sir, and the floor is now yours. We're looking forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Okay, Kevin, Gene, thanks very much. Glad to be here this morning. So why don't we just move on to the next slide. One of the big areas where I'm going to put some focus on today's talk is around mobile. From my perspective, mobile is one of the most impactful technologies in play today, along with cloud and big data, and in many ways they do play off of each other. But it's becoming a centerpiece to the future of almost any business. It's got a unique ability to radically alter business processes, enable higher levels of service and engagement with both customers and employees. So obviously, all of those attributes seem to play really well for travel. But first, let me just take a minute to talk about what is mobile. There's a number of different attributes to it. So one, it's location-driven, which is really very key for travel. Because of knowing where someone is, it gives you an opportunity to understand maybe better the context of where the user is, what they're doing, and therefore be able to service them a little bit better. Secondly, it's transactional. Forrester Research predicted that mobile commerce will hit $6 billion in 2011 and up to $31 billion by 2016. PayPal saw their mobile payment forecast to be more than $3 billion, and some merchants are seeing sales of up to 37% of all their transactions being done over a mobile phone. So clearly, especially as it relates to airlines and airports and travel in general, the transactional element can be very, very key. Smartphones are also social. The camera phone is the most popular camera on Flickr today. Special offers are being available through Foursquare. There's just a lot of potential there as well. And then there are a lot of sensors now in the phone. They're not just gyroscopes and accelerometers, but NFC integration, which will, I'm sure, be talked about a little bit later on for payments. But one thing that a lot of people, I think, still forget, or often forget, is that the phone is still a phone. It's amazing sometimes how many apps and mobile websites I see that forget that there's the potential for click to call when someone really needs to speak to someone. And then lastly, the phone can blend the physical and the digital using augmented reality to overlay digital data about where you might be over pictures. So let's move on to that next slide. And as I was saying, I think travel, perhaps more than any other industry, is a perfect fit for mobile and how it can really impact the industry. First of all, you're not at home. You're traveling. Most likely you're in an unfamiliar place and you're trying to juggle all sorts of information, like itineraries, and then there are also painful but necessary business processes like checking in, figuring out what carousel your bag's going to, and even expense reporting, things as mundane as that. But mobile really can enable a lot more interaction and help guide people through their journey. And I think that there's a potential to greatly redefine how these interactions happen and reduce the friction in the system, leading to better information, reduce stress on the traveler, and higher conversion rates for offers that you're putting in front of them. I think one great example is just look at Hotel Tonight, which just recently raised $23 million. Good for them. They can complete a booking in 7 seconds and just a couple of clicks, or La Quinta's new one-click reservation hold that I'm starting to see a bunch of advertisements for. And you can start to see the potential of what's possible. And there are many other examples across the entire spectrum of travel, but we'll just talk about a few. So moving on to the next slide, we'll talk about some of the mobile travel trends. And I've tried to put this into what's we're seeing today, fairly common, what's trending, and then what we can look for in the future. So things like schedules and being able to check in and providing self-service and itinerary management through apps like TripIt, that I think is fairly common across most of the major suppliers in travel today. What's trending is you're starting to see people offer ancillary services to be purchased over the mobile phone, seat assignment, push notification of changes, and the potential for airport merchandising, and we'll talk about some examples in a little bit. Down the road, I think we'll see more about advanced disruption management, more mobile payments happening, and then maybe using NFC to or other technologies as they may come down the pike to make the process of the travel even easier. Next slide, please. And as Kevin mentioned earlier, and as the report by Amadeus really lays out, there's a major change going on in the airport itself. The airport is becoming more of a destination, not just a point of departure. Long gone are the days of arriving at the airport just before your flight and then sprinting through the terminal. Now, with particularly because of security procedures and having to show up at least an hour, hour and a half before your flight, you're spending a lot more time in the airport. And so you're starting to see airports offer a bunch of different features that didn't exist before. Entertainment, and here's an example of kind of a mini Rijksmuseum in the Schiphol airport in Amsterdam. Many opportunities for fine dining. You have restaurants from top chefs like Todd English and Rick Bayless, restaurants like The Palm at JFK, available while you're in this time, and then shopping is exploding. This is the picture from the Dubai airport. But you're seeing many, many luxury brands being offered in airports around the world. And a lot of this is, now that there's so much dwell time in the airport, the airports have realized that they need to make the experience better during that period of time, and so these changes are happening. So let's move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the airport journey. So there are 5 kind of key touch points: arrival, check-in, security, while people are waiting around for their flight to leave, and then boarding, that are great opportunities to improve the traveler's journey throughout the airport. So let's talk about a couple of those now. Next slide. So on the way to the airport, one of the trends that I just wanted to talk about briefly is geofencing. It's a relatively new trend, got a lot of buzz at South by Southwest this year with some serendipity apps like Highlight and Glancy, but geofencing done well is a little bit different than what they were trying to accomplish. Essentially, this is the next phase of location-based services where the user's proximity to a given point, in this case this is a picture of DFW, creates triggers for activity. So think about when the traveler is on their way to the airport. We know a lot about where they're going to be. One, we know when they're leaving. We know when they should be arriving thereabouts to the airport. And through GPS, we can determine how far out they are at any given point in time. And from there, you can create these virtual fences that once they start to hit these locations, you can start putting some trigger-based marketing information out there. And even, if someone's running late, you can automatically perhaps rebook them on the next available flight, send them a push notification, because that because of traffic or other reasons that they're not going to make it through, and take one last little bit of stress off. But you can also offer upgrades for priority boarding. Maybe if there's a long delay, you can offer them an opportunity to go to the lounge for a period of time. A lot of different offers that you can provide, but just because you can doesn't mean that you should. You must always have a good balance between the service that you're providing, the marketing opportunity that you're given, but also the permission that the traveler is allowing you. So let's moving on to the next slide. So now mobile, again, because of the immediacy of use, enables a lot of spur of the moment ancillary sales. Some of this is available today from certain airlines, not all airlines, but I think that over time this will become kind of du jour and way of interacting and buying these different services, and the reliance of the kiosk, which I think has been at least a great boon to self-service. This mobile may become the primary mechanism to kind of check in and be prompted for different services. The next level down that I think a lot of people need to go to is to overlay the intelligence that you have about the particular customer and make sure that the offers that you're putting in front of them are actually designed to meet their needs and preferences and then help build loyalty. This is just a plea from me. I would love, to make security faster and easier. For me, this is the worst part of the travel experience. If the removal of clothing and shoes and unloading all your carry-ons wasn't enough of a hassle, now we have all these newfangled metal detectors with millimeter waves and so on, which even slow the process even further. What I would love to see, and this is a picture from the 1990 Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, not the one coming out this year, but a system that was more like highway speed toll collection where you can just kind of walk through and that's just one less area of hassle that we can get rid of. So next slide. Once you're through security, the question is, all right, now what? Again, in your home airport, it may not be as big of a challenge. You've flown through it a number of times, you know where you want to go, but when you get to the other side, or you're on the way back, you don't really know where things are. So apps like Gate Guru, I think, does a great job in helping users navigate the airports, and they're already not just that, but they're pushing offers out to travelers as well. Next slide. Also on navigating the airport, actually I saw this article just last week. There's a company called OTG Management who runs a lot of airport eateries, and their plan is to roll out up to 100,000 iPads at airports for travelers to use for free. The primary intent is from their side is to help drive customers to their other airport properties like restaurants and shops. It's kind of a new take on the internet kiosk, but we'll see how this goes. But it's interesting that people are experimenting with this, and I think experimentation is good. Whether or not there's an ROI, one Snickers bar at a time that people only purchase, we'll see, but it's a great learning opportunity. Next slide, please. Another technology that's very tightly related to mobile is the use of QR codes. It's a fairly trendy technology today. The adoption is questionable how many people are actually using this, but I think it's another thing that you can provide visual cues to help different parts of the traveler process. Check-in, enroll people for frequent traveler programs, purchasing different things, and of course contacting customer service. Let's not forget that also the phone is still a phone, so that can automatically activate. So moving on to the next slide. This is, I think, something that many people are using. I use when I can. Mobile boarding passes. This does make a fairly easy transition to the boarding process. But there's a lot more that can be done. But let's move on to the next slide. And one other area where mobile is taking on is, in the cockpit itself. iPads are now being introduced to replace the very large binders that the pilots would carry around with them. But I think over time you're going to find that the information on these devices won't be static, but may be tied directly into air traffic control and many other systems. And provide greater utility. Once again, like Total Recall, I think that science fiction provides a vision for how these devices are used. If it can be used on the bridge of the enterprise, it can certainly be used today in travel. Next slide. Now, one thing, the mobile does a lot of great things during the entire journey, but once you get onto the plane, please turn the phone off. I don't know if I necessarily believe that the interference really makes a difference, but they say that it does, but at the very least it's provided a lot of fodder for comedy. And then lastly, the last point I want to make is while we as an industry are thinking through how we're going to leverage all these different technologies to make the travel process better, we're not the only ones. Others from outside of the industry, particularly Apple, is thinking about how mobile can impact all aspects of the traveler's journey. And this is a picture of the oft-rumored but never spotted iTravel app. But it has the potential to have the same impact on the travel industry as Apple has on digital music industry, mobile carriers, and publishing. And for those who didn't watch or follow the Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference keynote yesterday, Apple launched an app called Passbook, which manages tickets and reservations and itineraries. United and Amtrak, interestingly, provided initial support through the demo, and yeah, they should be complimented for being very proactive in trying to play in this. I think at the very least, Passbook is TripIt Plus, but I think it can be a lot more, and perhaps this is a step towards implementation of the iTravel vision. But for all you in the industry, I kind of want to quote Andy Grove, who founded Intel, who said, "Only the paranoid survive." Don't get caught sleeping at the wheel. Experiment, innovate, try things, learn, and move the industry forward. And that's all I've got for today. With that, Kevin, I'll turn it back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Glenn. And for anybody who doesn't realise, Glenn is one of our regular contributors on Tnooz. So if you want to hear about other things that he's writing about with mobile and other elements of travel technology, you can see Glenn's page on Tnooz.com. So a great writer as well. So thank you very much, Glenn. Just a reminder, everybody, we are recording the entire thing, so don't worry about that. And also, please fire in your questions using the questions button on the right-hand side of your screen. So before we get to the second part of the webinar, we've got another poll for you all to have a go at. So just the question here, so what is likely to be the primary motivator for improving the airport experience? Excellent. Lots of you voting now. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, let's have those results up there, Gene. Okay, revenue opportunities 49%. The others, you can see the results there. So money seems to be the motivating factor rather than perhaps just improving the customer experience. So to talk a little bit more about how technology can really motor this along now and how the industry is trying to do certain things, I'm very pleased to introduce Brian Beard and Patricia Simillon. They're operating on opposite parts of the Atlantic today, but what great thing that we do here is bring everybody together. So Brian and Patricia, good afternoon, good morning. The floor is now yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Kevin. I just want to commend Glenn that no emerging technology presentation is complete without a Star Trek reference. So good job, Glenn. Let's go ahead to the next slide, Kevin. Patricia, do you have anything to say before we start?
No, that's fine. I'll let you start.
Okay. So let me put it a little bit in context for everybody. I mean, when we look at airports and emerging technologies, we think about it from everything that happens before the airport is really stagnant or pre-trip or data that is somewhat actionable, but we don't consider it real time. When the traveler gets to the airport or the airport vicinity, that's when we consider it to be the start of the real-time information flow. And if you think about that, when you get there, whether it's the parking structure, the off-airport parking, or actually walking into the airport, that's when suppliers need to know where you are. That's when your check-in or the actual security process starts to take place. That's when retailers would love to know where you are. That's when you should be notified, or as Glenn made a couple references to, automatic data being passed back and forth. And that's also the travel experience really starts. That is the start of the journey. Now, there's a number of factors that will influence the airports in the future, but it will be the evolution of mobile devices that will enable the greatest information sharing, but also the evolution and where they go. And it's interesting to look at where they will go, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Just what they could become, and that this is the key point. But think about it as a web within a web within a web, because it's not just about those immediate suppliers and participants at the airport. It's about coworkers and duty of care and security and tracking expenses and your social connections. It really everything becomes real time as you start your journey. Go ahead. Patricia, do you have anything to add to that?
That's fine.
Great. Now, I talked a little bit about real-time connectivity and mobile devices as well. But today, for the most part, and I'm not going to say it's nothing's ever 100%, but for the most part, the mobile device that we use today, we look at it, we ask it for information, we go retrieve, we search, we go to our mobile apps, we look at our email, pull up itineraries, pull up our electronic boarding ticket if we use that. But it's usually a search and retrieve tool. Where it will go, and this is inevitable, that it will become a more automated interpret and push tool. So your mobile device will actually be telling you where to go and telling you what to do and giving you real-time alerts as opposed to you asking it where you should go. And that is an evolution that we see happening. It's happening today and will continue to happen for the near future. And that's not only because the devices are getting smarter, but the GPS, as opposed to you looking at it, will guide you via voice. Will tell you if you've ever played games, and a lot of it has to do with gamification. Sometimes some of these single-person games tell you with an arrow where to navigate through the virtual world. It will be very similar. That's some technologies that will actually come into mobile devices. You can look at your mobile device and it will tell you, it'll point arrows on which way you should go, which is the shortest route to my gate. How do I get to the bathroom? Things that are important. Augmented reality. And of course, it will be location-based. And those type of things. As if your interests involve, look, I always love getting a breakfast burrito at the Atlanta airport. It will tell me where the nearest breakfast burrito is, regardless of airline carrier. The voice interface will become more ubiquitous across the devices. And it'll be pinpointed to your mobile headset or even on your eyeglasses. We'll have a receiver to be able so only you can hear it and it doesn't disrupt the people around you. And of course, it's all about real-time notifications. Amadeus is we're known for the GDS. We're known for our technologies, whether it's airline technologies, hotel, agency, and such. But a lot of people don't know that we spend a lot of time researching where technologies are going. We do studies, many of them throughout the year. Patricia, why don't you talk about some of the numbers that we're seeing around this?
Yeah, talking about the research, we've just published a research a report that's called Reinventing the Airport of Tomorrow, or Reinventing the Airport Ecosystem. And to produce this report, we've conducted a very extensive passenger survey on 838 passengers. We've interviewed over 70 contributors coming from, obviously, our industry, the airlines, the airport, but also other industry players like Disney, Cisco, Yahoo, even down to Merlin Entertainment and Pixar. So some of the numbers that you see at the bottom of the screens are actually talking about that. I think it's interesting when you look at the 62% to see that passengers are very rapidly adopted the smartphone for checking and boarding. And more interestingly, 51% would like to have location-based services on their mobile phones. So in a way, they can agree to be tracked on their journey through the airport if it brings them clear benefits such as fast lanes, coupons, or immediate access to the lounge.
It's interesting. The numbers that we're showing you are numbers that are done today. What you also have to realize is that those numbers are increasing substantially year over year or even month over month. So and you have to take that into account. Patricia, why don't you walk everybody through the scenario for the airport of the future on the next slide?
Yes, let's time travel a little bit to 2020 for a moment. I mean, Glenn went through the picture of the airport of today and all the different technology you can find, from augmented reality to tracking. Let me take you through some of the emerging technology that we're working on at Amadeus. So let's pretend I'm a traveler and I arrive on Monday morning, start of the week. I have to catch a flight, so I arrive at the airport with my car, and as soon as I enter the parking by waving my phone in front of the gate reader, I receive a vocal notification telling me, "Welcome back, Mrs. Simillon. We're expecting you on the flight to LA. Please go to your designated parking space, 827. Would you like to be guided with augmented reality?" I then move to the airport. I walk into the airport, and obviously I have my mobile boarding passport on my near-field communication chip. right sort in my mobile. And I always have a readable version on a 2D barcode, as you can see on my screen. Now I walk to the security lane. Now Glenn mentioned security is one of the biggest problem in the airport, and it's true, we can see that. The way it would be in the future, as you can see on the screen there, is that would be my personal information display system at the airport will tell me first which one is the fastest lane at this instant. So I'll go to lane 2. At security, I'm straightly, right away identified with my biometric signature, which is actually my own individual heartbeat. It's unique for each individual, and it's matched with my NFC boarding pass. While there, my body language is actually monitored to check if I have a pleasurable or a stressful experience, or even down to the fact that I could have a heart attack, and that happens more often than we know. It's a very stressful experience, and this could be monitored by my body language again. I'm now walking past security. I'm now on airside. And because I'm on airside, I receive customized offer because I'm tracked, and coupons to shop according to the shop I'm walking by. And I have 15 minutes to kill. So why not benefit from it and take some of the tailored offers? Well, what I'm really interested in is this new 3D printer shop that I can see. Well, you see this very designer sculpture here on the screen. This is what I could do in just a matter of a couple of hours. So I drop by with a design, which is a 3D design, and they will literally print it for me for the next day when I come back. I'm now walking to my boarding gate, being guided or not being guided, and I'd like to try this unique gaming experience. I can time travel and hunt dinosaurs in Central Park and actually have a true illusion, and trust me, I've tried it, it's true. I have an illusion of moving objects around based on 3D simulated environment. And even better, I can do with other passengers registered in this community and boarding with me on the flight. So I could really continue this hunt while on the flight. Oh, I've received a message to board. I need to quit the game to board. And I simply now swipe my smartphone in front of the readers, again, thanks to NFC, and I board, and I'm on the flight. Back onto you, Brian, for today's reality.
Okay. Kevin, let's go to the next slide. Now, one of the real killers, and probably one of the big motivations for change at airports, is stress. And I remember a lot of you probably who know me know that before my my time in the travel industry, I spent a number of years in the automotive industry, and we did a study way back. I think it was around the year 2000, and it showed that airports were the third most stressful event for people behind going to the dentist and buying a car. It was very close to buying a home, I think, and I think it's gotten worse since 9/11 and as terrorism has taken more forefront in the media. And probably the buying a car has actually gotten easier, believe it, because of the internet. But once again, stress level at airports, is something that needs to be addressed, and emerging technologies will absolutely address this and make the experience much better for the travelers. And if you think about that, having a device, a mobile device, a smartphone, and being completely informed all the time will take a significant amount of stress out of travel. I mean, being able to track your bags, because bags of the future will probably have radio frequency ID tags as opposed to just paper tags, and as they go through any checkpoint within an airport, you should be able to track that and say, oh, my bag is on the plane with me. I've got verification. Oh, my bag isn't on the plane, but I know it's going to arrive 30 minutes behind me. Those type of things. Being able to check mobile health. Just reduced uncertainty, so you know as soon as you land where your connecting gate is, how much time you have, how long the trip takes to get there. If you run, then it's going to take time off of that. Security flows, better, more free-flowing security, better readers, and of course, there will still be checkpoints. There will still be multiple checkpoints. We're not saying those are going away, but the way that we do the whole, what I call the cattle lines today, will probably be much different in the future. Of course, improved scanning has big to do with that. but generally the stress level, and I'll tell you, if you've ever traveled, I know we're going over to the leisure side here, but if you ever travel with 3 or 4 kids, you know, it's really a challenging experience. And same type of thing with trying to coordinate coworkers and those type of things. I'm not going to draw any parallels there, but I'll let you do that. But I'll tell you, we have some numbers that really back this up. Patricia?
Yeah, indeed, Brian. Actually, 72% feels that the length of time required to complete core activities, just simple checking to boarding, is extremely stressful. They feel it's a waste of time, let's just be honest. And while 45% responded that intrusive security procedures and waiting is an unpleasant experience. It was not surprising, 60% would like to have a faster baggage delivery, which means that in today's airport, there's lots of ways for improvement. We will all agree on that one.
Okay, Kevin, let's advance. Of course, one of the key drivers, I'm not going to read this slide to you, I'll let you read it, is going to be ultra high-speed mobile broadband. And I follow this quite closely. And over the next 10 or 15 years, and probably even the next 2 to 5 years, you'll see dramatic increases in the amount of data that can be passed to a mobile device. In fact, you know, speeds will continue to double and triple every 18 to 20 months. And past that, you know, if you wanted to download a full-feature digital movie, which today, you know, you have to have a wired connection and you have to let it run for, if you have the top speeds out there, you know, it takes 10 minutes to 30 minutes, you should be able to do that once you get to the airport. From the time you get to the airport to the time you arrive at the gate, you should be able to download 2 or 3 movies for a long flight. You know, these are the type of things that will change. And think about how the interaction of just real-time data gets better and alerts and everything else. It really is about mobile broadband, and those numbers will continue to improve. Those numbers continue to improve. Patricia?
Yeah, and speaking about basic needs to fulfill, 85% would simply like to receive notification for flight delays or change of boarding gates, simple as that. 77% request free and reliable Wi-Fi through the airport. So you see, once again, it's absolutely a basic request that the passenger have in today's airports.
Kevin, let's go on to the next one. So, you know, data privacy. You know, we can't just talk about all the cool, fluffy, you know, smart things that will happen in the future. Data privacy is one of the issues that needs to be addressed. And you know, from our numbers and our reports, I mean, it really is key though that people are willing to share their data, but there's also a stipulation that they want to control. They want to control who sees it, how much it gets passed, which suppliers have access to it, and really the consumer needs to be a little bit in control of that data, or at least know where it's going so they can control it, you know, after the fact. You know, there needs to be transparency, better user filtering. Global standards will emerge, and it's not a question of whose global standard. They will, in all industries where the standards has been accessed, it generally a standard gets popular and becomes adopted, and it becomes a de facto standard. It's going to happen. And of course, duty of care is really key to the future. And if you're a global traveler or if you're a security person at a corporation, duty of care is always top of mind. Patricia?
Yeah, indeed, Brian. Throughout the survey, the big question was really, how do I protect my data? There's a lot of data sharing into all the technology that we talk about, and 65% of our passengers surveyed really show concerns over information security, privacy, information overload, that are driving really them to demand for tighter control over who has access to passenger personal data and whose information they will accept. So it's not a matter, it's a two-way here. It's how much am I willing to share and how much am I going to receive? Is it going to be individual information, immediate, and tailored to my needs?
Yep. Kevin? Let's go on. Just a quick conclusions here. Obviously, we've talked about a little bit of the drivers of change, competition at airports, and competitions between airports and other travel modes like high-speed rail. It's really going to drive change. You know, revenue opportunities. I think most people on the phone from the last poll question believe revenue opportunities will be a huge generator. Technology itself, and just the use of new emerging technologies and customer demand. Those are the drivers. Of course, detractors include politics, the investment needed, generally just time to implement, right? That's always it's always gonna take longer. When a new technology is hyped, from the time it becomes mature and implemented can be years. You know, we've seen that with a number of technologies, and data privacy, as we mentioned. There's a lot of unknowns. You know, I'll point out a few. You know, economic factors. You know, when will the economy start really cranking out again? Or, you know, it will take a long time. Social trends, legislation, emerging markets. These are things that are all unknowns that will have an impact, positive or negative. But the whole point here, the experience will change. If you don't think it's going to change, if you think it's going to stay the same, then I will be willing to put money on it with you that you're wrong. Technology will be key driver. Mobile technology will get faster. These are all facts, and devices will get smarter and different in the future. It's hard to picture that one, but they will be different. And let me turn it over to Patricia now. She's going to kind of go over some numbers from our study. Patricia, it's all yours.
Thank you. So really the question based on what you say, Brian, is now how do we get there? And I'm going to try to map strategic direction for the next 20 years. So obviously a lot of what I'm going to say is shared in this report, Reinventing the Airport Ecosystem. But there is really a need for airports and airlines, and to be honest, the entire airport ecosystem, to think what they're trying to be and the role they want to play. So in the report, and I'm only going to go over two of this model, we talk about the conceptual model, which is what the airport is trying to be, the infrastructure, which is how they will be delivered and managed, and constraints like the green footprint, the revenue generating model, and customer engagement. I'll talk to them. And financing model, very interestingly, which sets out way to source necessary investment. And this is really something that everybody will agree is really important. Let's move to the next slide and look at the conceptual model. Now, what you see in yellow is the number of passengers. Would agree that the next model for an airport would probably be a mini-city, separate from its local surrounding. What it means is that it will be a self-sufficient entity, offering unique retail, entertainment, dining, workspace, for things like post office, banking services, medical center, so things that you would expect to find in a city. Interestingly, 20% thinks that will be a simple extension of local city. A little bit like what you start to see in Dubai or Paris, where they have local shop, where they have local things and flavor to the need of what the passenger are looking at, finding there. 16% thinks that it will be just simple shopping malls, runways, a little bit what we have today again, malls, runway, that's it. And 16%, same number, thinks that it would be just a bus station. You just walk there, you take your flight. I think that it will be probably the model for low-cost carrier, most probably. Let's move to the next slide, where I'll talk to you about revenue-generating model. Now, very shortly, we believe, or passenger, I would say, believe that the growth will most probably come from non-aeronautical revenues. So it's already the case today, but in the business model we're looking at, we think that airlines with higher spending customers would actually receive a bigger distribution from the airports. So it's interesting to see this model and to look at the total number of passengers each airline brings to the airports and the actual passenger spend. Now, the airport, according to the passenger, should try to generate revenues by promoting themselves as retail. We even had passengers say that we needed to find discount stores, which I think is an interesting model compared to when you look at the price of things in retail shopping today in the airports. A quick example is the Kuala Lumpur airport that keeps landing fee and parking fee constant for the past 19 years. And their strategy brought more airlines and ultimately more passengers who spent at the airports. If we look at the second model, the customer engagement model, very briefly, this one looks at how you can engage with a customer. As I said before, the passenger wants to be in control. So 67% want to define the extent of this engagement. But interestingly, we're looking at new models, like which we call single coordinating interface, where airlines, airports, and even leisure providers have developed this unified platform and a strategy to engage the passenger, providing seamless and passenger-driven two-way communication. So if you're at the airport, this is the airport talking to you. But if you're on flight, or if you're about to catch your flight, you're coming to the airport, this is actually the airline talking to you. And it can be done to a restaurant offering you menu while you're about to land. If we move to the next slide, I'd like to, and I'm trying to be quick here so that we can take some of the question, just recap our presentation today. We've talked about this collaborative airport ecosystem, and I would agree, and I'd like to make up some very clear takeaway here. We know that tomorrow's airport ecosystem will be data intensive. It will be knowledge rich, and it will clearly be an intelligent environment. So everything from mobile phones, social media, airport sensors, and every new application will generate this kind of exponential growth in data and will enable generation of powerful new insights. For example, Seoul Incheon Airport realized that 45% of duty-free revenues account to Chinese and Japanese travelers. Well, this is the result of the research and data mining they've done for the past 5 years. So they know they have to tailor their goods or their offer or their coupons to these Chinese and Japanese tourists. Now, we also know that the winner in this game, we were talking about competition before, will be the one not only with driving revenue, will be the one with deep passenger relationship, and will be able to answer, to grow revenue, the imperative of growing this non-aeronautical revenue. And truly the passenger will remain a primary source of this income stream. Growing the commercial flow will demand this deep, engaging relationship where the passenger will really perceive a benefit and a value. If not, they will simply not go with it. On the second layer, the inner layer there, you can see I've tried to put new things that we worked on, such as vertical farming. The airports are looking to sustain themselves with their own food system and growing their own food. We've talked, when I gave you the experience of virtual worlds, or touchable hologram, 3D printers, but ultimately the delivery of all of that comes back to this competitive response. And I think the key strategy to succeed will truly be an active collaboration between all the partners of this ecosystem. And I'd like to read out just a sentence of our report that summarizes a little bit what we're really trying to say today, Brian and I, is that tomorrow's airport will be a complex environment, for sure, with the passenger at its heart, collaboration as its lifeblood, and innovation as its currency. Thank you very much, and it's now back to you, Kevin.
Hi, thank you very, very much, Brian and Patricia. Brilliant stuff, and also to Glenn for the first part. So, we've had an astonishing number of questions come in. Obviously, the three of you have really struck a chord with those listening in. So we will try and get through as many of these as possible. Those that we don't get through, we'll take a note and we'll try and get those sent out to the other panelists, and they can come back to you personally. But we've got about 10 minutes now for the Q&A. Now, brilliant question. Whenever you hear of anything like this, about enhancements that need to be done, technology that needs to be put into place to improve X, Y, or Z, you always get this kind of question come in, and it was actually the first one that I was going to ask as well. So, but Hamdi Danouni, so thank you very much for your question. Clearly there is room to improve the traveller experience in airports, but what business model can support such developments and that investment? So it's the thorny question. Let's get it out the way first. Who pays?
Well, ultimately, I think it'll be spread around through the whole supply chain. Of course, the consumer will pay because they'll be part of it from airport fees that generate better technology for airports to implement. Suppliers will invest and will invest not only in their own technologies, but technologies, as Patricia mentioned, to collaborate between the supply chain as well. That's going to happen. It will open up. And standards will emerge, whether it's data passing or just being able to pass electronic messages in the background. There's a number of things that I think, but investment will continue to happen, and that really is the key. It's investment in time. It really dictates how long or short these technologies will take to implement. By the way, most of these technologies are around today. Patricia, I know you've been working a lot on these models.
Yeah, it's interesting, this question, because it comes down to growing this non-aeronautical revenue. So we know there's a limit to how far you can go, but it's interesting to look at Munich Airport, Airport, for example, their shopping centers are full on weekends of not only travelers and most probably not only meeters and greeters, but they're full of people just coming there for the shop. So they're just going there, walking there down on Saturday afternoon because they have great shopping experience. So this is how you attract, and tomorrow how the airport would be able to attract this non-passenger and build even more revenue. There's two ways. That either they have a way to attract airlines, and they keep on building this competition between airports to have the latest science museum, and I'm thinking about Changi Airport, or this very zen, again, experience that you could, for example, have at Changi with the butterfly garden. I'm quoting Changi because it's one of the most advanced airports which really, truly have understood this kind of reason whereby you have a pleasurable experience, you provide a pleasurable experience to the passenger, and you attract more passengers. So I think this is the key to succeed if you want to grow revenue, and specifically non-aeronautical revenue, which we know is the future, is to make your airport a pleasurable one and to compete with the rail system as well.
Okay, and this is a kind of a related question. We're talking about who pays and all those kind of things. So Kieran Merchant asks, how does all this technology and processes influence, design of airports? I mean, and we've talked a little bit about some of the technology around security and things like that. I mean, are we likely to see some fundamental changes to, I guess, to the architecture of and the throughput for passengers within airports as a result of all these kind of things? I'm hoping I know that none of you are actual architects yourselves, but presumably you'd have a view on, what kind of changes are we likely to see to infrastructure, for example?
I might try to answer that one. What I've looked throughout the research, the one-year research on this report, is that I've met actually several architects, and interestingly they're looking at models according to the need of the passenger. So we know we've seen now the emergence of premier terminal for this first class or top of the range business class travelers who just want to go to the gates, so they just want to board. So the airport for this premier lounge will simply be a place where you're pre-registered, so we know who you are, we know you're supposed to come there to board, so you'll just board. And all of the security procedure will be simplified, so you'll have this kind of down to 20 minutes, I'm on my plane. So this will be interesting. You also have, as I mentioned before, this type of model where you have a bus station. You'll go there, you might wait longer, you might not have an interesting shopping experience for sure, but you'll just go there, wait for your bus or wait for your plane, and take it on, and off you go. So what I think the architecture will evolve according to the type of passenger the airport will serve.
Yeah, and this is a climbing. I just want to add a couple of things from my perspective also. Yeah, I barely design like what's in our house, let alone an airport. But what I would hope to see, and what you're seeing at a couple of the newer airports, or newer terminals, is much higher ceilings, a lot of open space, more windows, as opposed to some of the older airports, which are kind of low ceilings, cinder block kind of walls, things that make the environment inviting and more relaxing and less austere in many cases. And of course, all the new things will be wired for wireless, and other enabling other infrastructure to be able to put into place that the travelers can leverage.
Okay, so this is a kind of I guess a timely question, slightly off of what we've just been talking about. A few people have asked this. Timothy O'Neill Dunn is one, and also Pankaj Gabber. And it's this idea around, yes, everybody's using their mobile to connect in various different ways, but do we see, ultimately changes to the data roaming issues, for example, will actually change the way that airports have to think about this? We've had some carriers are talking about changing the way they charge. I mean, do we see this as very much a short-term problem, and airports should just kind of motor ahead with assuming that everybody is going to remain connected, or do we see this as a wider issue?
So this is Glenn. I'll chime in for a second here. Anyone who thinks that, I know that data and data cost is a problem, and roaming, especially when you're traveling, but to think that the data train is going to go anywhere but up at this point, is a challenge. But what I do think, people can use as a bridge, especially within an airport, is to leverage Wi-Fi as an infrastructure. And if you allow people to connect their devices via the local Wi-Fi networks, which are typically free or ad supported in some way, that can offload a lot of the traffic. And for the traveler who's going to be there, especially on an international flight where roaming is much more costly, if you're not in your home country, I think that can where you're there for a couple of hours, leveraging Wi-Fi is a way to greatly reduce your costs. I know I try and do that as much as possible when I travel.
Okay. Sorry, someone was going to jump in there.
Yeah, Kevin, you also have to look at the technology trends around that as well, because the evolution of Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi technologies will make it more open and I believe less expensive in the future. I mean, it's just the time it takes to implement. I mean, if you look at the 4G or LTE technologies out there and what's on the horizon, the next step up is probably 100 to 300 times faster than the speeds that we have, even the fastest today. And a cell tower, instead of being able to broadcast for 1.5 miles, will be able to broadcast for 30 miles. And those type of things will make access to wireless data, very open, and I see a huge change in structure of costs and fees.
Okay. We are going to go over just a couple of minutes here because we've had so many questions come in. Like I said, we will take a note of all of these and try and get them sent to the panel during this week so that they can get answered. So, brilliant question here from Ron Reed. Thank you, Ron. Not quite sure where you're from, but great question. So, who will own the customer at the airport? ? If it is the airport, how will they build loyalty without that passenger information? So, who wants to jump in there?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in there. I think it's a very interesting question that absolutely recap everything we're trying to say. I vote for collaborative way of working, and this is one of the reasons why I've been researching on reports like this one, because the way you see airlines talking to customer today or airports talking to customers, this very individual relationship, like I own you and this is my relationship now. I believe that the airports and the airlines that will succeed in the future will be the one who understand the imperative of collaboration, because the customer, as I said, and remember my number, 67%, they own the right to define who interact with them. So at the end of the day, if you think about it, you really want the best of both worlds. And when I say that, I also include the new partner of this airport ecosystem, such as the restaurants, but not only the gaming experience, everything I mentioned before, this kind of mini city models where you'd like to have an interaction directly. So I think the winning airports, and at least the models that we overview in the report with the different mini case studies, are clearly the one that that collaborates. So once the customer is no more a question, it's everybody done at the airport ecosystem.
Yeah, and Kevin, this is Glenn. The other group that may end up owning the customer could be Apple or Google. I mean, if you consider, that passbook that was shown yesterday, not only are you holding the do they have United and perhaps Amtrak, which got you to the airport, which got you to United, but they've got loyalty cards for Starbucks or going to see a movie. I think if you consider that. Was it like 400 million people have entrusted Apple with their credit cards for iTunes accounts, and that you're able to do a lot of things on their one platform, much like digital music. Perhaps that becomes a method by which Apple starts to own the customer, and much like the music labels and publishers have had to figure out how to work with Amazon and Apple and Google. They may have to figure out how to work with the airlines may have to figure out how to work with them as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but they have something. I just want to pop in there. I kind of disagree with that, because I think that Apple do not have the passenger information. So one way or another, let's talk about collaboration. They'll have to go through what they don't like to do, but it's collaborate with the airlines for sure for this information, and truly with the airports.
Okay, so we're a couple of minutes over, so final question from me then, and it's, as always with these kind of things, we want to get a kind of some kind of sense of conclusion here. So around the panel, I don't mind who jumps in first. So the first question, the poll question that we asked was just around what is your current experience of travelling through airports, and the overwhelming majority said it was just satisfactory. Do we think then as a panel that given that we're talking about all these different types of technology that are going to come in and actually improve the experience, that this will actually be enough to change people's perception of the overall airport experience? Or are we still, as passengers, leisure or business, really just relying on the fact that, sometimes planes are delayed, they're late coming in, they're late going out, baggage handlers go on strike, your luggage gets lost and all those kind of things. That is actually things outside of the technology world that we've been talking about for the last hour here that are still the main things that inhibit the people having a great airport experience.
Kevin, let me take that one first. I'll be brief. I think it will become much more enjoyable, and to the point where we won't think about it as much from a stress perspective, because of some of the emerging technologies. Of course, there's always going to be delays and unexpected things that happen during travel. The issue is going to be that we're more informed, we have better options, and we can take them in stride. And that will be the really big change in the experience.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll just add on that for me, when I travel, the biggest stress points is if I can make it through security, then the rest of it is okay, because just all the large queues and lines, and if both check-in and security can be smooth, then I think that can take a lot of stress off of the traveler.
Okay, and before you jump in there, Patricia, with the final word, sorry, let me just raise this point from someone that's just sent in a remark, and this is from Sharon Elizabeth Lambert, and I wondered if this is generalising or whether you agree. She says, sorry to say, but actually airports in the Middle East and Asia are much more pleasant than those elsewhere. Would you broadly agree with that? I guess the newer airports and these enormous hubs that are emerging elsewhere seem to have got it right because they are newer.
Yeah, I would totally agree to that. Right to this question, I do choose as a frequent traveler the airport I'm connecting to. So, again, the airport is a place that you can choose. It's obviously not one destination, but most of us are doing two legs travels, so we can choose these airports. And I agree. In Dubai, if you talk about it, you have an hotel right within the terminal, so you transfer right there. This is just one of the examples where if I have to connect somewhere in the Middle East, I'd probably choose Dubai or Abu Dhabi, to be honest, because I know I'll have this pleasurable experience. This is where the competition is really going to be placed. Airports will compete between each other to gain, specifically the connecting airport will compete within each other to capture this pleasurable experience and to capture even more passengers. So I believe I'm in position, the way before you choose airline, you're going to choose your airport nowadays.
Okay, brilliant stuff. So thank you very much. We've gone over time and seemingly have run out of time. So a few reminders then. So we will have a recording of this entire webinar, including all the slides, on tnooz.com within the next 24 hours. As I said, that's usually our target. If you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can do. It's easy to do on tnooz.com, where we're pumping this kind of stuff out every single day of the week. But last of all, I really should thank Amadeus, as always, for supporting another Tnooz webinar. So heartfelt thanks from the Tnooz team to Amadeus. But specifically here, thank you very much to Brian Beard, to Glenn Gruber and Patricia Simillon for contributing. Great presentations, great chat at the end, and obviously most importantly to everybody that's listened in today. Thank you very much. Like I said, we've got loads of questions that we'll try and get through over the next few days. So thank you very much as always for listening, and we hope you'll join another Tnooz webinar very, very soon. Good day to you all, and goodbye.